So, dear colleagues, good morning again. And today we have the next lecture from the psychiatry, in the first lecture in our course, and it will be about the use of psychoactive substances. It doesn't matter where will you live, which field of medicine you will work. You will see these patients and you will see a lot of these patients. If we will talk about in Europe, most of the people who are dependent, they are dependent from the alcohol. But if we will talk about the countries of African countries or Asian countries, in these countries there are a lot of people that are dependent from other psychoactive substances, and we are talking about the wheat, we are talking about the poppy flower, substances, and you will see such patients. And we have also one group of people who are dependent from the medical substances. We know that during many years people were taking psychoactive substances because they enjoyed the effect of them, and in most of the cases this use is called recreational or social use. What do we mean if we are talking about the recreational social use? In this case, we are talking about that case when people are using these substances to enjoy or to relax. In the social, there is a thought that if you will use any psychoactive substance, in this case, you will be better on other days and you will feel better, but it's not true. We know that people were using these psychoactive substances for many years, and if we look on the history of using of these psychoactive substances that have influence on our brain, on our mental activity, we can say that, for example, people previously they noticed that some of them, they change the behavior, they change the way of thinking, they change the feelings of the person, and if these specific substances were pleasant for the person and if people enjoyed them, people starting to use them in this recreational use. But if we will look also in the history of the use of psychoactive substances, we can say that during most of the years and during most of the times in the history, they were used by people who were making specific rituals. It were a magician that lived in the tribes, and they did specific work for these tribes, for these people, and they were people who mostly use these psychoactive substances. It were psychedelics, it were psychostimulants. We know that in most of the cases, these substances that are used by people, they potentially will produce a tolerance, and they will lead to the withdrawal symptoms, and they also will lead to the dependent potential or dependence of people of them. What is tolerance and what is withdrawal? We are talking about the tolerance when the person has to take bigger amounts or increasing amounts of the substance to get the desired effect. What does it mean? It means that if we will look on the life of average person, for example, European person, in this case, we know that most of European people, they tried alcohol, even once in their life. And if we'll talk about the first uses of alcohol, we can say that in most of the cases, near hundreds of milligrams, it's enough to be drunk for the average person. Hundreds of milligrams of strong alcohol. We are talking about them like vodka, whiskey, cognac, brandy. If the person, for example, the medical students who were living in Ukraine and where culturally it's okay to use alcohol, if the students were using the alcohol during 4 years, in this case, on the first year, the student will need minimum 300 milliliters of strong alcohol to be drunk. It means that this ability to of the organism to destroy the alcohol increased, and in this case we are talking about the tolerance. And the tolerance has also other side. What side is it? If the person will take the same amount of alcohol, for example, that was taken previously to be drunk, in this case, the person will not have the same effect. Yeah, so two types of understanding of tolerance. Increasing amounts of the substance to get the desired effect, and on the other side, the same amount of the substance will not lead to the same effect as previously. What is withdrawal? Withdrawal symptoms, they occur after the use of discontinued, often constitute a rebound from the effects of intoxication. What does it mean? It means if the person were using some specific psychoactive substance and in some moment of time or for some specific reason stopped taking it, in this case, the person will have unpleasant symptoms. Typically, it's somatic and it's psychic symptoms. If you're talking about the somatic symptoms, in this case, we're talking about specific things like tremor, like headache, like nausea, vomiting. If you're talking about the mental symptoms or psychic symptoms, in this case, we're talking about the inability to concentrate, sleep disorders, irritability, and these withdrawal symptoms, they become like one of the main reasons why people continuously are using psychoactive substances. Can you imagine the life when you were taking some specific psychoactive substance for some specific reasons for some time, and then you understood that it's not okay to take this substance and you wanted to stop it, to doing it? Yeah, you want to stop taking psychoactive substance, but after, for example, 1 day or 2 days after stopping of using this psychoactive substance, you have unpleasant symptoms. You are unable to sleep, you become very irritable, you feel very weak, you have negative emotions, it means that you are depressed, and all these symptoms lead to the things that you are unable to perform your routine activities. For example, you're unable to study, you're unable to communicate with your relatives, you are unable to work if you are working, and these withdrawal symptoms, they become like one of the main reasons why people start taking psychoactive substance again. Yeah, it means that people want to reduce these negative symptoms. And if the person will use psychoactive substance, in most of the cases, these negative withdrawal symptoms, they disappear or decrease if the amount of substance is not enough. So if we are talking about the dependencies from the psychoactive substances, we have to say that these symptoms of tolerance and withdrawal, they are the main, like two main parts of this syndrome, dependent syndrome. And if we will look on them, we have to say that these symptoms of tolerance and withdrawal, they have been termed physiological dependent. However, because of the word dependence, these terms, it's better not to use. It's better to use another term, it's neuroadaptation. So we know that people, as we told before, they like to experiment. They like to experiment with different substances, with different things in their life. It's like natural. We know that if we look on the base of the world, alive world, we have to say that if some specific organism does not have enough experimental activity, in this case, this organism or this creature will not be successful. What does it mean? Can you imagine the life where you does not have food in the magazines, in the shops? Yeah, you have to find the food and you have to take it from somewhere. For example, if you are a monkey and you know that, for example, bananas, they grew in the places where there are a lot of aliens, like it means that where there are animals that can eat you. Yeah, in this case, if the monkey will be not experimenting with trying to take the banana. In this case, this monkey will die. Yeah, because it's not okay. Yeah, if you will not try to take the banana. Yeah, because you are scared to be eaten by some specific animal. From other side, if you experiment too much, in this case, you does not understand where is the border. Yeah, if you will cross this border, the animal will eat you and you will not continue living. So with people, it's the same situation. People like to experiment because it's very interesting for them. What will be if you will do this or that? Yeah, if you're talking about the psychoactive substances, in this case, the situation is very interesting. Interesting because if we look on the ontogenesis of our brain, and we know that our brain was developing during millions of years, and every pleasant emotion that occurs in our brain, in this case, this emotion is noticed by our psyche, by our consciousness as specific activities that is useful for our living. What does it mean? It means that previously, if we were found in, for example, some food, we eat it, and if we will have positive emotions from them, we understood that this activity, it's okay, and we have to do it again and again, yeah, to become alive. If we will find some sexual partner and if we will have sexual relations, in this case, our brain understands that it's positive, it's pleasant, yeah, and we want to continue doing it. The same situation with psychoactive substances, but there is one specific feature. Psychoactive substances, they are known for millions of years, but our brain does not know how to react on this use of psychoactive substances. If you're talking about them, we are talking about the work with the neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, it means that every psychoactive substance, it changes the work of specific substances in our brain that help to work this or that way. It depends which substance will you use. In this case, different neurotransmitters will change the work of the brain. Yeah, so if the person use psychoactive substance, specific psychoactive substance, in this case, the brain has a firework of neurotransmitters. And if we look on the previous history, we didn't have any like similar opportunities to have such fireworks of the neurotransmitter activity. It means that our brain understands that this is very positive, this is very pleasant, and you have to continue using this psychoactive substance. And it is the way when the person very simply become dependent, because this pleasure is noticed as useful effect. Yeah, because during millions of years, everything that we did, it was for our life. It was like noticed as positive emotions. So speaking about the recreational use, we know that a lot of people, they drink coffee, they drink alcohol, they smoke, in some cases smoke cannabis, and you will say that some of my friends, they are smoking, they are drinking, but they are not dependent. Guys, you can believe me that if there is some specific thing that you are using and you know that it is not good to use it and you continue using it, in this case we are talking about the dependence. Yeah, for example, sugar. Yeah, it's also a psychoactive substance that have influence on our brain and also on our body, and it is noticed as a pleasant use. Yeah, so if the person will continue using sugar, in this case, you know that you will have the diabetes mellitus, because the sugar exists 50 or 70 years and our organism cannot work with sugar very well. Yeah, it means that even understanding the negative effects of sugar, you continue using it, means that you are dependent. Yeah, even if you will say that I can stop using it, I cannot smoke, I cannot drink coffee, it's not dependence. You can believe me that it's dependent. So if we are talking about the addiction or dependence, we are talking about the overpowering compulsion to use a substance, and that the person has specific driven, but the compulsion to repeated use despite the most disastrous consequences. What does it mean? It means that people have thought that they want to continue using specific psychoactive substances. If you're talking, for example, about the alcohol, it's alcohol. If you're talking about the cannabis, it's cannabis. It's cigarettes or other specific psychoactive substances. We know that we cannot say that all of people, they have almost the same symptoms of the dependence. Some periods of time in some people, they with specific very developed symptoms of the craving. In some periods of time, people does not want to use a substance and they can stop doing it. But still, this craving or this compulsion is one of the main whole points of the use of psychoactive substances. Speaking about the alcohol, we know that alcohol, it affects almost every organ and system in our body, and in high doses it can cause the coma and the death. Speaking about the alcohol, we have to say that it is the most widespread illicit drug for teenagers, and it is the most widespread substance that lead to the dependencies in the whole world. We know that if the person will use the alcohol, it will affect several neurotransmitter systems in our brain. It includes, first of all, opiates, which leads to the positive emotions. It's GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, it's glutamate, serotonin, dopamine. So if the alcohol will affect the GABA system, gamma-aminobutyric acid, which is one of the depressant neurotransmitter, it will cause anxiolytic and sedative effects. For example, yeah, as we told before, if it will influence the opiates level, it will lead to the positive emotions. Alcohol inhibits also the receptors for glutamate. We know that glutamate is one of the receptors, one of the neurotransmitters that leads to the normal activity of the brain. It activates our brain. Long-term ingestion of it results in the synthesis of more glutamate receptors. When alcohol is withdrawal, the central nervous system experiences increased excitability. Persons who abuse alcohol over the long terms are more prone to the alcohol withdrawal syndrome than people who have been drinking for only short periods. We know that brain excitability caused by the long-term alcohol ingestion can also lead to the cell death and cerebral degeneration. It also can lead to the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, and it can lead to the tremor. You will ask, what does it mean that if you will use alcohol, it will lead to the increase of the amount of the receptors? I will try to explain to you. Our brain is a specific organ that works due to two types of activity. We have like the electrical activity and we have the neurotransmitter activity. Neurotransmitter activity, it means that there are chemical substances that help to work for our brain. Electrical activity, it's activity that include inside of the specific nervous cell that has specific term neuron. So electrical activity comes from one side of neuron to another side. And neurotransmitters, they work between two neurons. If the person will use any psychoactive substance, in this case, as we told before, it will increase the amount of this, decrease, or it will change the the work of some specific neurotransmitters, these chemical substances that help don't help to connect two neurons. If the person is using alcohol for long periods of time, in this case, it will lead to the synthesis of more glutamate receptors. You will ask why? Because it's specific work of alcohol. It leads to the increase of the amount of glutamate. If there are a lot of glutamate and there are few receptors, few specific cells that work with neurotransmitter, in this case there are too much neurotransmitter and it does not work properly. So in this case our brain wants to make more receptors to make it work better with bigger amount or higher amount of glutamate. So drinking alcohol leads to the increase of glutamate receptors. When you stop drinking alcohol, in this case the amount of glutamate decreases in the brain, and as you remember previously, when you were drinking, a lot of glutamate receptors occurred in our brain, in the brain of the person who were drinking. If the person stopped drinking, amount of glutamate is very low in the brain, and these glutamate receptors, they has to work with the glutamate, which when we have insufficient amount of it, and the brain will show you specific symptoms of withdrawal because these receptors, they need glutamate and there is not enough of it, and you have withdrawal symptoms. Yeah, and as we told before, it will lead, for example, to the excitability. In some cases it will lead to the specific hallucinations, it will lead to the delirium tremens, and in some cases it will even lead to the withdrawal seizures. Opiate receptors are increased in the brain of the recently abstinent alcoholic patients, and the number of receptors, it correlates with the craving for the alcohol. It means that if the person were drinking and then stopped, the amount of opiate receptors, they are also telling the person's brain that they need alcohol, and the person have symptoms of withdrawal. What is alcoholism? Alcoholism, it's a specific mental disease, so alcohol dependence, and it is dependent from the alcohol. We know that alcohol is poison because it, as we told before, it affects almost every organ and every system, and first of all it affects the brain of the person who is using it. We know that at all ages alcoholism is more common among the males than females, and however it's given the somewhat later age in the females. We know that previously the ratio was, for example, 6:1 or even 7:1. It means the ratio between the male and female alcoholism. But now it tends to decrease. For example, now it's 3:1 or even 2:1. And for me, it were not understandable why does it occur, because what changed. And then I understood what happened, why the proportion between male and female alcoholism decreased. If you're talking about the amount of male alcoholism compared to female. I remember the time when I were the student of the first year, and in this case I will tell you that, for example, in the shops you could find, for example, 10 different types of beer. Yeah, it were like Lvivsky, it were Mikulinetsky, it were Opilla. Yeah, but now you can find 110 types of beer. You can find low alcohol drinks, and you can find a lot of wines. What happened? Happened that way that typically men, they prefer using strong alcohol drinks. What does it mean? It means that they are drinking vodka, they are drinking whiskey, they are drinking cognac. Yeah, and if you're talking about the girls or females, they prefer drinking low alcohol drinks. Yeah, it's, for example, wine, it's beers, it's energetic drinks with alcohol. And during the last years, the amount of these low alcohol drinks, it increased. And mostly these girls that prefer drinking low alcohol drinks, they start drinking this increased amount of alcohol, and it leads to the thing that they become dependent. So our behavior changed because of their drinking of these drinks. So girls, you have to remember that moment that if you will start drinking, for example, beer, brandy, cola, or gin tonic or something like it, in this case, potentially you can be dependent after some period of time, so it's better not to do it. What is the statistics of alcoholism? We know that near 10% of the population of Europe is problem drinkers. The alcohol, as we told before, is the most widespread illicit drug for teenagers, and overall it's marijuana. 15% of all car accidents and 50% of pedestrian accidents, they occur in the intoxicated state. About the onset of alcoholism. The onset of it typically include early. Early, what does it mean early? As a rule, it's late teens or sometimes it's early 20s. But if you are talking about the first symptoms that can be noticed by the surrounders, as a rule, we are talking about the late 20s or early 30s, and sometimes it's even later. Why does it occur? It occurs because on the first stages of alcoholism, it's very difficult to notice, for example, the urge to drink, the increased amount of alcohol that the person is drinking, because it's culturally acceptable in most of the countries to drink alcohol, and it's very difficult to notice it. As we told, typically the onset is late teens or early 20s, but in some cases there are cases when the alcoholism can occur after the 60s. What are the main clinical features of the alcoholism? The urge to drink may be experienced as a craving or an imperious need or compulsion. What does it mean? Compulsion, it's repetitive thought that comes into the head of the person. It occurs again and again. The person understands that it's not okay to have this thought, but still it's stronger, and the person have to satisfy this thought, because if the person will not satisfy this thought, there will be the high level of anxiety and the person will feel uncomfortable. And because of it, people typically has to satisfy these uncomfortable things, and they continue drinking alcohol. Almost all alcoholics, they deny that they have the problem with drinking or rationalize it one or another way. On the later stages, maybe alcoholics understand that they have problems, but it's too late. Very often they quick to lay blame for the drinking on the situations and other people. For example, today I'm drinking because I have a headache, or it was a difficult week and I have to relax. I had problems with my colleagues, so I have to relax. It's the war in Ukraine and I have to continue drinking because I feel better when I am drinking. We know that stressful events, they typically are followed by the increased amount of the alcohol that is used by the people. And the alcoholics, they can also be intoxicated during the good or the best periods of time, and sometimes or simply in the neutral times of their life. It means that typical alcoholics, they drink in almost all the situations, but negative moments of life, they lead to the increased amount of the alcohol use. Most of the alcoholics, they make the attempts to control their drinking, and they have some success in this area. But if you're talking about this success, we have to say that it is short-lived. What does it mean? It means that the person can stop drinking, the person believes that it's very simple, the person is not drinking, but as a rule it lasts, for example, 1 month, 2 months, and then it stops, yeah, with drinking again. If we are talking about the alcoholism, we also have to say about one specific feature. Not only alcoholism has this feature, almost all the dependencies, it's loss of control. And this loss of control is like the hallmark of the alcoholism and almost all the dependencies. What does it mean? It means that loss of control, it's like need in control every time when the person is connected with psychoactive substance or with specific thing. For example, the average person does not need to control herself not to drink or not to use psychoactive substance. If you're talking about the alcoholics or people who have other dependencies, they have to make efforts to control their drinking or using of psychoactive substance. What does it mean? It means if there is a bottle of alcohol on the table, if you want, you drink it. If you don't want, you don't drink it. Alcoholic cannot just want or don't want, because alcoholics all the time they want to drink and they have to control themselves very much not to do it. And there is also one problem with them, with this loss of control. If the person who is dependent or if alcoholics start drinking alcohol, in this case this drink will continue till the end. What does it mean till the end? Until the moment when the person become very drunk and will not be able to continue drinking, or until that moment when there is no more alcohol. It means that they cannot stop. When alcoholics drink, as we told, they become intoxicated, and this intoxication, it brings their life down to the ruins. If we will look on the life of the people who are dependent from the alcohol, we can say that in all the cases they have problems in the social, in the occupational, and in all other fields. For example, in the health field, their friends are lost. They have the health problems. They have problems in the marriages. The children are abused. The jobs are terminated, and even looking on these events, these people, they continue drinking alcohol. We know that people who are drinking alcohol for some periods of time, for example, for a few years, they have changes in the personality. For example, previously upstanding individuals, they can become people who are lying, cheating, stealing, and engaging in all manner of deceit of protect or cover up their drinking. Shame and remorse the morning after, they may be intense. Many alcoholics, they progressively isolate themselves to drink undisturbed. For example, some people, they are taking the rooms in the hotels or the motels, and they prefer drinking to be alone. I have some patients, for example, one of them, he's a priest. He, when he wants to drink, he run away from his home, then he goes drink, and then he come back after a few days. Many alcoholics may appear quite grandiose, yet on closer inspection, one sees that their self-esteem has slipped away from them. Most of alcoholics display this alcohol withdrawal syndrome when they either reduce or temporarily cease consumption. These people, they can wake up in the morning with the shakes, with the strong urge to relieve drinking is a common occurrence. Many alcoholics eventually succumb to the morning drink to reduce their withdrawal symptoms. It means that if the alcoholic wake up and there is a tremor, the tremor that is developed so much that they can even brush their teeth, when they even cannot drink the soup or pasta because their hands are shaking. In this case, they have to drink some amount of alcohol to reduce the symptoms. And after drinking even some milliliters of alcohol, as a rule, the symptoms decrease or disappear and they become like normal people. Some degree of tolerance occur in all alcoholics. For example, there are cases when people, as we told before, for example, if you will start drinking alcohol and you have never drank it before, it will be enough 100 milliliters of strong alcohol to be drunk. Yeah, and there are people who can drink, for example, 3 liters, 4 liters of strong alcohol in one day, and it's okay for them. Yeah, and they can be drinking these few liters of strong alcohol, for example, for weeks. Typically, alcoholic stop drinking in the case if the health is bad. What does it mean? If they have the hypertension, if they have the nausea, vomiting, if their stomach is aching, if they have the heart attacks, in this case they can stop drinking. In all other cases they can continue drinking for days, for weeks, and it's okay for them. If we want to understand what is alcoholism, we have to understand that what is alcohol intoxication? Alcohol intoxication is the amount of alcohol in the blood of the person. As a rule, it is conventioned or expressed as milligrams per deciliters or milligram percent. What is mild alcohol intoxication? Mild alcohol intoxication, it occurs when people drink as a rule, small amount of alcohol, if you're talking about the average person. And typically, most of people will have the euphoric effect. They become more talkative, they become more open for the social, they enjoy their life, they have reduced complexes, they become better. And this scene is the main reason why most of people start drinking alcohol. For example, the group goes to the disco and people feel that it's not dancing without psychoactive substances. Yeah, they start drinking some alcohol and they feel better. They become more communicative, they become more they can dance better, easily. But it's not like the law. In some cases, people can drink small amounts of alcohol and they can become irritable, they can become paranoid, and they become suspicious. And even in some cases, small amounts of alcohol can lead to the suicidal ideation and suicidal acts of some people. As a rule, we are talking about the people who have organic injuries of the brain, or if these people have psychopathic personality features. Moderate alcohol intoxication, as a rule, we are talking about the symptoms that tends to change from the irritability, from the activity to the retardation. These people become retarded, thinking is slow, they become inattentive, the person is responding after some periods of time, after pause. They cannot control their behavior and understand their the situations, and it can lead to the social problems. Typically, the face is flushed, the conjunctives are reddened, the pupils are dilated, they have slurred speech, there is nystagmus, ataxia, and they have problems with coordination. Severe alcohol intoxication occurs in cases if the person have the problems of consciousness. Typically, they have the problems of consciousness. It can be stupor, it can be coma, and if we are talking about the average person who does not have alcoholism, we are talking about the presence of nausea, vomiting, and if the person who were in these alcohol intoxications continue drinking alcohol, they can die. You will ask what can happen with the person who drank a lot of alcohol. As we told previously, alcohol is a poison that affects almost every organ and system, and also it affects our brain. The effects of the brain, it means that it goes through the hematoencephalic barrier. Maybe you know that our brain have specific barrier that protects him from the actions of the different psychoactive substances that can destroy it. So if the person who used alcohol or any other psychoactive substance which goes through the hematoencephalic barrier, it will lead to that thing that this amount of poison, like alcohol is poison, goes into the brain. And our organism is very smart. And what happened if the poison is in the brain? In this case, our body put some amount of fluid into the brain to reduce this amount of the poison. And in this case, we are talking about the tumor of the brain. You know that the skull has specific volume and it cannot be increased. Yeah, because it made from the bones. If we have the tumor of the brain, or if the person have the tumor of the brain, in this case, there is only one big hole from our skull through which the brain can goes out. Yeah, and it's foramen magnum. You know that the longitudinal brain and spinal cord and our brain, they are connected through the longitudinal brain, and in this brain we have like the centers of heartbeat, you know, breathing. If these centers will go through the nucleus, if they go through the foramen magnum, in this case they can be destroyed, and in this case the person can die from the use of alcohol. Yeah, so you have to remember, if your group mate, your friend, your girlfriend is drunk so much, intoxicated so much that they have the disorders of consciousness, in this case this person have to be rescued, or it's better to hospitalize this person, because if you will not do it, potentially they have they can die. We also have to talk about some specific features that typically occur in almost all the alcoholics. First of all, it's palimpsests. What is palimpsests or blackouts? They are characterized by the dense anterograde amnesia. During these blackouts, the intoxicated people, they don't remember the event that were during this alcohol intoxication. After coming out, or after waking in the morning, these people, they don't remember what happened previously in the evening. Yeah, they can find themselves in some specific flats, in some specific place, and they don't remember what happened, how did they get there. They are trying to ask their friend, they are trying to take the information about what happened yesterday, and because they don't remember anything. In some cases, these people can make some specific accidents. For example, in their cars, they can sleep with other people and doing a lot of things They can waste a lot of money. They can find themselves, for example, beaten by somebody and they don't remember what was that. Another thing that typically occur in some people, it's pathological intoxication. Typically, this intoxication occurs when people use relatively small amount of alcohol and they have pathological reaction on this small amount of alcohol. As a rule, we are talking about the disorders of consciousness that occurs in these people. And these people, they tend to behave inadequately. For example, they can be aggressive, they can make harm to other people, they can destroy, for example, scenes, and they can be jumping through the windows, they can do things that are not typically, that could not be met typically in these people. And what is the specific features of this pathological intoxication? As a rule, people have complete amnesia on these events. It means that they don't remember events that were during this alcohol withdrawal or alcohol shakes. It occurs in anyone after excessive prolonged use of alcohol. In full-blown alcohol withdrawal, drinkers are apprehensive, anxious, and easily startled. They may pace agitatedly up and down the hall. They can be depressed and they can be irritable. They can have the tremor. They can shake like a leaf, and they're unable to hold seats. Even sometimes they cannot stand up. Most have problems with concentrating, thinking, they don't remember things, they have problems with memorizing. Also, they have the fatigue and they are unable to sleep. Also, they have the headache, the dry mouth, the anorexia, the nausea, and the vomiting. The diarrhea also may occur in these people. On examination, the temperature, pulse, and respiration, and systolic blood pressure may be elevated. The pupils are dilated and the deep tendon reflexes are hyperactive. Sometimes these people can have the myoclonus, the horiform movements, or Parkinsonism. Occasionally, patients may have isolated, brief walk visual hallucinations or illusions. Sometimes they can have the auditory hallucinations. Also, people who are dependent, who are alcoholics, they can have the alcohol withdrawal seizures. These seizures is also known as RAM fits, and they are rare accompaniment of the alcohol withdrawal syndrome. They occur after many years of heavy drinking, and they are seen from 1 to 3% of all the patients who are withdrawing from the alcohol. In most of the cases, these seizures, they are tonic-clonic generalized seizures. What does it mean? It means that they are the seizures that typically occur in people who have the epileptic disease. So it's grand mal. In about a quarter of the cases, however, the seizures have a focal onset. Focal, it means that some small groups of muscles are included. For example, it can be the seizures of one finger, the seizure of one hand, it can be myoclonus of hand. Many patients have just one seizure. However, patients can have, for example, the clusters of 2, 3, or sometimes 6 seizures, and in some cases, these people can have the status epilepticus. What is status epilepticus? We are talking about the status epilepticus in the case if the person have some groups of seizures without coming to the normal level of consciousness. What does it mean? It means that the person have seizure, and between the seizures, the person does not understand what happened, does not become normal, and the conscious does not normalize. We know that every seizure it's also the tumor of the brain, and if the person has the status epilepticus, in this case we have to think and we have to remember that people can die from this negative state because the brain has a tumor, and it also leads to the stop of breathing or stop of heart beating. Delirium tremens is also one of the things that you have to know. You have to know because if you're talking about the average doctor who is working in the hospital, it doesn't matter in which hospital you will work, you will meet such patients. Why does it occur? Delirium tremens, it's alcohol withdrawal delirium. And typically it occurs on the second or the third day after the stopping of using of alcohol, and it's seen in about the 5% of the hospitalized alcoholics. How does it occur? Typically, near 50% of all the patients in the general hospitals, or even more than 50% of patients in the general hospitals, it's patients who suffer from the alcoholism. And if the person goes to the hospital, it means that mostly this person will not continue drinking alcohol. For example, if the person had trauma, if the person have appendicitis or any other specific disease, this person stops drinking alcohol. If this drinking was, for example, for long periods of time, in this case, this person can have the withdrawal symptoms, and delirium typically occur in these people. What happened in these people first of all? First of all, these people, they have problems with orientation. They are disorientated in time, they are disorientated in place, and the orientation of a person is normal. It means that they understand who are they, but they don't understand where are they and what is the date, for example, what is the time. Also, these people typically have the hallucinations. As a rule, it's visual hallucinations. As a rule, it's complex, vivid hallucinations. And we are talking about the black and white micros or hallucinations. It means that people can see the rats, the insects, the bugs, the worms, and the behavior of these people, it is characterized by these specific psychopathological disorders. What does it mean? It means if the person can see the rat that wants to bite him, in this case, the behavior will be specific. The person can run somewhere, the person can jump, the person can try to beat this rat who is trying to bite. If the person can see the worms that scrolling on the hand, the person will try to throw them out, will try to kill them. Yeah, if the person can see the devil, small devil that is sitting on his shoulder and talking with him, in this case, the behavior also will be specific. And for example, if the person will see somebody who will give him commands, potentially these commands will be satisfied. What does it mean? It means if the person can see that devil that is sitting on his shoulder and is telling that the doctors are not doctors, it's my people, and they will make specific operation and they will take your soul. In this case, the person's behavior will be specific. For example, he can run from the doctors, he can attack the doctors, he can try to hang himself or to kill himself, and you have to remember about it. In these people also can be present the tactile hallucinations, the auditory hallucinations. The delusions are also present, typically present in these people. They believe that the food is poison, they can believe that the food is poison, they can believe that other people want to make harm to them, that others people, they are talking about them, that they are doing some negative things to them, that everybody is not friendly toward the patient, and the behavior will be caused by these psychoactive substances. If you're talking about the memory of the events that were during the delirium tremens, we can say that mostly the patients don't remember what happened, but they can have the memories on the most affective, it means the most emotional psychopathological events of this state. So they remember some specific facts. Another symptom, that a syndrome that can occur in the patients who have the alcoholism, is the Korsakoff syndrome. Korsakoff syndrome, it's also known as the Korsakoff psychosis, is characterized by the striking inability to form new memories with the subsequent blank spots of the field with the confabulations. It means that people typically don't remember new events, they are disorientated, and still they have pathology of the memories on the previous events, and as a rule these memories, they are very specific. For example, I remember one of the patients who came here to the hospital, and he told that he was a person who were moving in the Ternopil city, in our city, on the helicopter, and his helicopter fell down, and it were like accident, and he told what happened during this accident. It means that he filled his blank spots with these confabulational memories. Confabulational, it means that they are not real. How do we see these patients with Korsakoff syndrome? For example, they forget things that happened right now, and they can continue, for example, asking the same questions after a few minutes. They don't remember. The long-term memory is also disordered in these people. If you will look on these Korsakoff's syndrome patients, as a rule, you cannot notice that they have some specific problems, because they look like normal people, and if you ask like simple questions, you will not notice that something is wrong with them. But if you will ask some specific difficult question, in this case the person can show you some specific disorders. As we told before, alcohol is psychotropic poison, meaning that it affects brain and it destroys the brain. And this destruction of the brain by the alcohol, we can say that it is alcoholic dementia. Alcoholic dementia is a state that is characterized by the symptoms of dementia, and also it is accompanied by the personality disorders, personality changes. Patients become coarse and heedless of the social convention. They may become apathetic, and judgment is poor. They have problems with their cognition, for example. They don't remember events, they cannot calculate normally, they have problems with their attention, with the intellect, and thinking of these people, it becomes concrete. They can have the minor cortical signs such as apraxia, agnosia, and aphasia. However, these are not the prominent part of the clinical picture. If you will make the CT or MRI of the brain of these patients, you can see that these people have cortical and the cortical atrophy and ventricular dilatation. It means that the brain is destroyed by the alcohol. Another state that occurs in these people is alcohol hallucinosis. It's also known as alcohol-induced psychotic disorder with hallucinations. It is typical state in people who drink alcohol for many years, and these people have generally auditory hallucinations, and in some cases these hallucinations, they are accompanied by the delusions of the reference, delusions of the persecution, and they are present in the persistent variable periods of time. So people during this alcohol hallucinosis, they can have different type of hallucinations. As a rule, it's voices that are talking with each other, voices that are talking with the patient. The person can have some sounds, can hear some sounds in the head, and patients does not enjoy these symptoms, and so they don't want them. The delusions of persecution can also be present, and so, as we told, in these people, and the behavior of the patient is caused by these psychopathological disorders. For example, if the patient can hear voice that is talking with him, the patient can start talking with this voice, and if the patient believes that the food is poisoned, for example, or other people are talking about him or laughing at him, the behavioral can be also specific. Alcoholic paranoia, it's also one of the states that occurs in people who suffer from the alcoholism. And the main part of this alcoholic paranoia, it's the delusions of jealousy. In this case, the spouses, they are suspected of infidelity. The absences from the house are seen as proof of it. The spouses desire to keep apart from the patient during the patient's intoxicated, regarded seen as a mere excuse. For example, I remember the case when the patient during the drink went to the shower, and he was in the shower during a few minutes. After coming out from the shower, he told that the wife was with somebody, for example, with the neighbor, and the person believed that it's true. Yeah, can you imagine the situation when your wife or your husband is in the shower, and during these few minutes you had sexual relations with somebody? Alcoholic paranoia, it's also one of the states that occurs in these people. Occasionally hallucinations may occur, but they does not play the main role in this state. As a rule, we are talking about the specific paranoid thoughts, for example, that the food is spoiled, the rotten, the poisoned, the strange people approach the house and in the dead of night, and something like it. Another state which occurs in people who have alcoholism, it's alcoholic polyneuropathy. As we told, alcohol affects almost every organ and every system in our body, and the nervous system is also affected by the alcohol. So people have polyneuropathy. It means that typically the alcohol destroys the peripheral nerves. What does it mean, peripheral? Peripheral, it means that distant part of our hands, distant part of our legs, its genitals, and what are the symptoms of it? As a rule, it's specific walking. These patients have a feeling like the foot wooden. For example, they don't feel normally their feet. They have problems with feeling their hand, and they have specific shaking of the hands. Also, this alcoholic polyneuropathy leads to the problems with the potential and with orgasms. Another part of the lecture is about the drugs, and you have to know few main things. First of all, that depending on the effect of the psychoactive substances, they can be divided into three main groups. First group of psychoactive substances, it's substances that increase the work of the brain, increase the activity of the brain. Yeah. These substances are used to be more active, more communicative, more powerful. These people have decreased need in food, decreased need in sleep. These people, they become like better in their abilities. For example, in some cases, when the psychostimulator is good quality, it can be used by the students to increase the memory, to increase the ability to study. For example, in some countries, students prefer using some specific psychostimulants to increase the ability to memorize things before the exam. In this group of psychostimulants, we have, like, for example, coffee or caffeine, it's amphetamine, it's ecstasy. Another group of substances, it's depressants or sedatives. They are used by people to feel the specific thing that has name euphoria. Euphoria is a state that occurs without any specific reason. It means that people just feel happiness and they enjoy being in this state. It doesn't matter where are they. In this group, as a rule, we have like benzodiazepines, we have poppy flower substances or opiates. One of the patients, when he was 17 years old, he tried the first time the opiate. He injected this opiate into the vein. This guy, he were living for a few years with his friends who were people who were dependent from the poppy flower substances from the opiates. And this guy, he understood that it's not okay to use the opiates because he knows that it will lead to the dependence. This guy went to the birthday party of his friend, and on this party his friends were using opiates and he wanted to try it. So when he injected it in the vein intravenously, he felt like the pleasure that he told he will never forget. It was the pleasure that have never been found anywhere else, and he have never felt such strong emotions. So he told that I were laying on the ground, I could not move, I were vomiting, I were laying in this vomit, but still it was the best time in his life. He told that he remembered these seconds, and this pleasure was the main thing that led to that thing that he continued using the opiates. So guys, this euphoric effect, it's like the main thing that lead to the use of these depressants or sedatives. It's the second group, and the third group is psychedelics. Psychedelic is substances that are used by people because people like enjoying the effects of them. What do? They changed the ability to think, they change the way how do people understand the world. For example, if you're talking about some specific psychedelics, in this case, when people use them, for example, LSD, diethylamide of lyserginic acid, these people can feel like that they can sniff the colors, they can hear the volume, that everything in the life has changed, that the trees are talking with them, that the colors are playing and showing people some specific features. People typically are using these psychedelics to understand better life, to open the soul and to live more interesting in the world. So in this group we have like LSD, detail limit of lyserginic acid, it's cannabis, it's mushrooms, it's psilocybin that can be found in the psilocybe mushroom, it's cactus substances. Speaking about all these substances, you have to understand one main feature. I started from it and maybe I will finish with this, that our brain, it were developing for millions of years, and every positive emotion that were generated by our brain during millions of years, it were stimulus that showed that this type of behavior or this specific thing, it helped us to live. It means that we found some specific food, we eat it and we enjoyed it. We understood that it's good to eat. If we use psychoactive substances, our brain have firework of neurotransmitters, firework of activity, and we don't know what to do with it. Our brain understands that it is the best thing that can be found somewhere in the social. And if the brain felt this pathological impulse, pathological, extremely strong impulse, in this case, this brain remembers that this event and this substance is very preferable and the person wants to continue using it. Why people have this compulsion that occurs when they use psychoactive substance? Because the brain gives this firework of impulses, and there is part of the brain where these pathological impulses is memorized. It means that we make the memory that the use of this substance leads to the pleasure, and we want to continue it. And this impulse, it's all the time is blinking in our brain. Yeah, it says that you have to use, please use, it's positive pleasure, use. And we cannot stop doing it. So starting using psychoactive substances, you have to remember one main feature, one main thing, that even if you will try psychoactive substance only once, it can become the way of become dependent, because nobody knows how does it work and how does it occur. For example, I remember one of my patients, he is 17 years old. When he finished school, his mother put him, like not put him, like he went to study to Lviv, one of the Lviv universities, and his mother went abroad to earn money. Yeah, when she came after 3 months, she knew that her son did not go to the classes, that he has a lot of absences. And when she started to talk with him about what happened, he told that he started to drink alcohol and he started to smoke weed and to use amphetamine. So near 3 months passed, and I saw this guy after 3 months of drinking sometimes alcohol, using sometimes psychoactive substances like amphetamine, like cannabis, weed. And this guy, he were dependent so much that I could not even imagine that during 3 months the person can be dependent so much. So I am treating these guys for 2 years after that period, and during these 2 years this patient had few exacerbations. For example, one of the last exacerbations was he was treated in our mental hospital in one of the departments, and his mother was abroad in the Poland, and she asked me if she could take him to the Poland. I told that the best way to change his life is to take him abroad, because he will change his friends, he will change the way of living, and it can be like the situation when he can change the way of thinking, and he cannot be dependent in this case. When he went to the Poland, he worked during 1 month, and after 1 month he drank a beer, and after drinking a beer he bought the cannabis, he bought the amphetamine, and it started again and again. So he started to use psychoactive substances, and then in some period of time he tried one of the opiates. When I were talking with him after this accident, he told that, "Doctor, can you imagine? Everything that I did before, it is nothing if we will compare it with the use of this opiate. I wake up with one thought that I want to try it again. I am living the whole day with one thought that I want to do it again and again. I am going to bed with this thought, and I have only one thought about continuously taking psychoactive substance, because there is nothing in life that can be compared with this pleasure that you received from it." And it became a huge problem. This guy now is in the rehabilitation center. He is there more than 7 months, and he still have thoughts about taking psychoactive substance. And guys, there is one thing: if the person is dependent, we are talking about the inability to treat the dependence. This person will be dependent till the end, till the death. It means when you start taking any psychoactive substance, you have to remember that this psychoactive substance can be the way of the whole your life, of living of the whole your life. It means if you start drinking coffee, you have to remember that this substance can be the substance with which you will live till the end of your days. When you start smoking cannabis, weed, yeah, it can be the substance with which you will live till the end of your days. When you start drinking alcohol, you have to remember that potentially you will be alcoholic. I'm not talking about such substances as amphetamine, as salts, as opiates, and because if you will try such substances, in this case, potentially you will be dependent, and it's very difficult to stop taking them. So the life belongs to you, and you have to do good choices. The best choice that you can do is not to use psychoactive substances, because in most of the cases there is no way from this dependence. So enjoy life, enjoy sport, enjoy sexual relations, enjoy culture. As for me, one of the best ways of dependence is dependence from the information. The scientists say that if you want to make your child happy, the best way that you can do for your child is to show the child that the life is very interesting. If the child will understand that it's very interesting to read, to look on some specific things, to do some specific things, in this case the person will be happy. So guys, enjoy the life and just enjoy these interesting things. Thank you for your attention, guys.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, do you have any questions?